hands on the roof.
Can you tell him the cops? Can you tell? I'm not
I
doing
said
it.
hands on the roof.
Sir, listen,
Stop, or you will get tasered.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Southern Draw Law. My name is James White, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, former police officer. The initial clip that we just saw is of Melvindale, Michigan police officer Matthew Furman, who is now a lieutenant. His career highlights some of the most egregious courses of conduct you'll ever see out of a police officer, short of actually killing someone. The unique part of this story is that almost nobody is trying to protect this guy, and for whatever reason, they can't seem to get rid of him. The news story that we're going to watch comes to us from WXYZ TV out of Detroit. Let's go ahead and watch some of their story, and we'll jump in and have some conversation about Lieutenant Furman.
Why do you think that throughout your career you have continued to be accused of excessive force?
I think I'm very proactive, and I think I'm involved in a lot more scenes and incidents.
It would be hard to find a police officer in Melvindale more polarizing than Lieutenant Matthew Furman. In his 12 years on the job, he's been promoted and celebrated, suspended and criminally charged, fired and brought back.
Do you have the temperament to be a police officer?
I do.
A lot of people don't think so. Some people in your own department, in fact.
And I've had a lot of people tell me I'm a great police officer.
The slew of allegations against him that he adamantly denies can be found in citizen complaints, lawsuits, police reports, and depositions. Like in 2016, when Furman pulled over a mother driving her two small children. Her vehicle had no car insurance, and Furman ordered her car towed. Instead of letting the woman wait for her ride, she said, Furman dragged her out of her car and onto the ground, forcing her over the vehicle's hood, all in front of her children. Furman would be suspended for 3 days, but the suspension was later overturned by the Public Safety Commission. Just a few months after that, he would detain a robbery suspect who said Furman slammed his head into the police car while he was handcuffed. A lieutenant reported that he witnessed this and told the man he would not sweep that incident under the rug. Another officer there said under oath that Furman went way over the line and split the man's head open. Furman told us he didn't cause the injury at all. It was the people the man was stealing from. He said the two officers didn't see what they thought they saw.
They're both lying.
I'm not going to call them liars, but I'm going to say their perspective was probably off.
Okay.
Because they were halfway down the block.
Furman says that an outside investigation cleared him of any misconduct and that he ultimately faced no discipline.
Prosecutors say a Melvindale police sergeant completely mishandled a call here in this neighborhood.
In 2019, Furman would be charged by Wayne County's prosecutor, accused of assault after he responded to a disorderly conduct complaint. While there, an intoxicated man would accuse Furman of throwing him down a flight of stairs.
The defendant used coarse language, threw a food bowl across a kitchen.
Furman again denied the charges, saying the man fell on his own. The prosecutor would dismiss the assault charge in exchange for Furman pleading no contest to willful neglect of duty. He would be fired over the incident, but an arbitrator overturned his termination, saying the city offered no concrete evidence that Furman threw the man down the stairs.
Watch his door.
2 years later, Furman was part of a high-speed police chase. The suspect had stolen a vehicle, police said, after striking an officer. And after his vehicle crashed, he fled on foot before officers surrounded him. As officers tried to subdue the man, a Dearborn officer's body cam caught Furman repeatedly stomping on the man's leg as multiple officers look on.
Cameras all around, guys.
A Dearborn officer would report Officer Furman's force to Melvindale PD. Furman said the man was resisting officers as they tried to handcuff him, so he used the stomps as a form of pain compliance. Furman was not disciplined.
So he's sitting there stomping on the guy's leg. First of all, the tactic is not useful. It's not the least bit effective on a person who is probably experiencing the physical shock of whatever trauma he experienced in the car accident, plus being given verbal commands by 25 people, plus being stomped in the legs. It's just not going to work. Notice that the officer said there's cameras all around, guys, not stop beating this guy, but stop doing it on camera. From 2016 to 2019, remember that our story tells us that this guy's been a police officer for 12 years. So it just came out a few days ago. So that means that he was probably started his police career in 2013. So within 3 years, he has this first incident. Now, what's unique about this is that we actually have the department attempting to do something with this guy. We actually have other officers that have stepped in and said, hey, this guy's out of control. And yet, nothing happens. And the reason is, and a lot of states up north are like this. If you watch Josh Abrams' channel, Accountability for All, he exposes some of the most horrible dispositions I've ever seen on police officers. Just this arrogant thug attitude that comes out of the officers that I see on Josh's channel. And Josh does an amazing job. I love Josh's channel, but I actually think Josh is in his best form when he is just on the street auditing, not backing down, because he is just one of the best at just taking absolutely no shit from cops. In some of these northern states, these guys are making six figures. And in Massachusetts, in the area that he audits, that you're talking about guys that are making over $200,000 a year. Some of them make them with overtime $300,000 and $400,000. And a lot of this is protected by police unions because they will protect the police officer no matter what. There are a lot of provisions in place that allow police officers to resign in lieu of termination. There's all kinds of different things in the state of Michigan that protect police officers, just like Lieutenant Furman. Let's continue.
I'm very hardworking. I'm very proactive. And if you are proactive and you're hardworking, you are going to get more complaints.
But these aren't just complaints coming from citizens. These are, in some cases, complaints coming from other officers in your department, officers in other departments, your chief in some cases. That's not typical, is it?
I don't know.
Melvindale's own mayor said the lieutenant can be his own worst enemy.
Do you think he understands de-escalation?
Oh, no, I don't. I feel like in the heat of the moment, he needs to learn how to, put aside anger and just do his job.
When we talked to her last month, she said Furman belongs at a desk rather than on the street, that at least one lieutenant in the department doesn't want to respond to calls with Furman, concerned that they'll end in trouble.
When you have other officers saying that they don't want to respond to calls with him, that can potentially cause a problem.
Cooperate!
What am I doing?
Cooperate!
Furman's latest brush with controversy would take place back in July. It happened on a day last July when Lieutenant Matthew Furman stopped Williams for driving around traffic barricades.
You have a driver's license?
I don't. My mother actually just got in an accident.
Do you have a license?
It's at the house.
To be clear, Williams should not have been behind the wheel. His driver's license was suspended. The vehicle he was driving had no valid insurance. And when Lieutenant Furman asked for his name, Williams would provide a fake one.
One step out of the car for me.
And why am I stepping out?
Because you're refusing to provide information.
gave you my
I
name.
asked your middle name. That is relevant. You're refusing to provide it.
A second officer makes the scene as Williams is told more than once to get out of the vehicle. That's Williams' girlfriend in the passenger seat, and her two small children, ages 2 and 5, are watching from the back.
Step out of the vehicle now.
Yes.
Next thing is you get tasered. Get out of the car.
All you got to do is comply. When a police officer gives you a lawful order, you're required to follow it. When a police officer asks for your information, your name, you don't have a legal right to provide a fake name.
Just pause here to clarify that. You don't have a legal right to provide a false name. Most of you guys know this, but just for the people who might not. If you're stopped by the police officer, you have certain obligations if you're driving a motor vehicle. It differs from state to state, but almost everywhere you have to present your driver's license, and you would have to present some form of registration or some form of a proof of financial responsibility or insurance coverage. So whenever you refuse to do that, you are technically subject to arrest in some places for that kind of thing, right? That's one of the circumstances where they can actually force you to ID. And the rule as far as giving the police officer information is that under normal circumstances, outside of the driver's license, insurance, and registration, you're not required to answer any of their questions, but if you're going to give an answer, it should be the truth. Because if you tell them a lie, most states are going to have a law that punishes giving false information to law enforcement. Now, we can go on for days about the fact that they don't hold officers to that standard because they lie routinely in reports or misrepresent facts or whatever, and you never see police officers charged with this kind of thing. But this is a case where they dislike this guy so badly that they've even tried to hold him accountable for that. And nothing works, and the reason is because protections from the unions. Let's continue.
According to multiple current and retired police officers who reviewed the circumstances of the stop for 7 News Detroit, Williams was arrestable for driving on a suspended license. But what troubled every officer we showed this video to is what happened next.
Turn around, hands on the roof.
Can you tell him to calm? Can you tell? I'm not
I
doing
said
it.
hands on the roof.
Sir, listen,
Stop or you will get tasered. When I tell you to do something, you do it. End of story.
Williams' hands are on the roof of the car as Furman's partner holds his right hand and shoulder.
Okay.
Relax. I'm not.
Hands behind your back. Interlace your fingers.
Can you please do
Hands behind your back.
You do it. He got me.
Turn
He
around.
got me. He has me. He has me.
He dry stunned me from everywhere, from my arms, my legs, my butt. He wouldn't stop.
Cooperate.
What am I doing?
Cooperate.
What am I? I'm not doing nothing.
Furman would later say he continued to use his taser on Williams because he believed he tried to grab it. Williams says he never did.
You take up. Stop.
Stop.
I'm not doing nothing.
Stop.
I'm not doing. What am I doing? You take.
Stop moving.
Don't move. Who's not going to move when they getting tasered 10, 11 times?
We don't know if he's got a weapon. We don't know what's on his person. I don't know what's in his mind. I don't know his criminal history yet.
I want to be careful about how I frame this. A taser is an acceptable tool to use when someone is resisting arrest under current use of force protocol. If a person is subject to arrest and can be legally arrested and they won't comply, you can use a taser on them, just like you can use pepper spray on them, just like you can use soft or hard empty hand controls based on their level of resistance and take them into custody. So whenever you shoot a taser at somebody and you shoot the probes, that's, it's called the darts or the probes. What happens is that it completes an electrical circuit between the two, and essentially it circulates that 50,000 volts through that person's body. So ideally you'd want some separation between the two barbs or probes, say, one here and one here. Well, the top dart comes out parallel and the bottom dart comes out at a certain angle. I think it's like 7 or 8 degrees. The closer you are to the person, the less separation that you'll get from the darts. And so if you're, say, 10 feet away from the person, you're going to have a pretty large spread between the top probe and the bottom probe. Or if you're a little bit closer, you're going to have a smaller one because there's not enough distance for that 8 degrees to make up a separation. And so the circuit can be smaller. Either way, as long as both darts connect, you're going to get the circulation of the 50,000 volts. And importantly, the person can't really escape it. It locks them down. So as long as the circuit's complete, the taser should be effective. With a drive stun, the dart never comes out. So you have these two probes. And so once you put it against somebody, as you can see, he breaks the connection simply by moving his body. What I found interesting about this tactic by the backup officer is that his body positioning looks to me as if he is trying to be protective of the defendant. It looks to me, and I might be reading too much into this, and I might just be basing it on like what I know about how much everybody doesn't like this lieutenant. It looks to me like this guy who's backing him up was actually trying to place himself intentionally between this Lieutenant Furman and the defendant, probably to try to eliminate any excessive force. But that's not why he got in trouble. Why he got in trouble is what we're going to watch now.
After Williams was subdued, Furman turned his attention to his female passenger, whose children remained in the back seat.
Get out of the car now! Get out of the car! Step out of the car! Turn around. Hands on the hood. Hands on the roof. Step over here. Step over here. You're being detained right now.
I'm being detained. I'm trying to make somebody. I have to.
Sit down and shut the up.
Lieutenant Furman would later say that the woman posed a threat while seated in the vehicle and needed to be detained.
Under Maryland versus Wilson, you can ask a passenger to get out under the same rule as Pennsylvania versus Mims as a precaution for officer safety. But the thing is, it's sort of counterintuitive to the idea that she would pose a threat. If she was going to be a threat, I can tell you from running hundreds, if not thousands, of domestic calls over the course of my career, that if a person who's in a domestic relationship with another person is going to be a threat to your safety, it will be while you're doing something to the person that they love, even if they're the person who called you to the scene. So if she was going to be a threat, if she posed any sort of a threat, her threatening behavior would have manifested itself while they were tasing and attempting to subdue this guy. If she was going to do anything, she would have jumped out and tried to help him. So the idea that after the fact, he just goes and detains her for literally nothing. I mean, he had no reason whatsoever, no lawful reason to put her in handcuffs and remove her from that vehicle. So that's obviously problematic.
Afterwards, Furman continues to argue with Williams, who's now in handcuffs.
And then you would get out of the car. And then you would put your hands on your back.
Get out the car.
It's on video, retard.
You are.
Yeah.
Furman heads to his vehicle, determines Williams' real name, and runs it through his computer.
You got a revoked license, so you should have been behind the wheel. You got a ton of warrants, and now you got obstructing and resisting and everything else.
You gonna lose your badge.
I ain't gonna lose. You're gonna lose your freedom because you get to go to jail today, mother.
After Williams stands up, another officer sits him back down. And then, with Williams still wearing handcuffs, Lieutenant Furman does this.
You will not get up without our permission.
Man,
Sit the down.
I am sitting down. You pulling my hair.
Throwing my head against a fire truck while I'm in handcuffs. I can't do nothing. I'm helpless.
Today, Drakkar Williams is facing a slew of charges, including resisting arrest, providing false information to a police officer, and driving on a revoked license. At the same time, Michigan State Police and Melvindale Police are investigating Furman's actions for possible criminal and internal charges.
It's under investigation at this time, and it will be continued to be investigated and thoroughly done.
My priority is doing whatever I have to do to go home. And if that means somebody gets tasered, then somebody's getting tasered. But I'm going home to my family and my friends. That's my number one goal.
I reached out to Furman's 3 past police chiefs for comment on this story. Each of them declined. One of them, Chad Hayes, claimed in a lawsuit that he tried to rein Furman in as chief and lost his job as a result. Hayes said Furman engaged in repeated incidents of police brutality, but that he was discouraged from holding him accountable because of the significant revenue he generated by towing vehicles. Furman denied that, and in his own lawsuit against Melvindale, claimed the chief retaliated against him because he favored a different towing company. Both lawsuits settled out of court. Since July, Furman has been on administrative leave with the department while his conduct from the Williams stop is being investigated by MSP. Furman, we should add, has withdrawn his 2019 no contest plea from his criminal case. I'm Ross Jones, 7 News, Detroit.
The other thing is grabbing a guy who's handcuffed and pulling his hair and slamming him against the ground and then, calling him a retard and cussing him out and all this stuff. Like, it's obvious this guy's a hothead. And to hear him describe himself, he's a complete narcissist. This is the guy who has an explanation for everything, and that explanation is always going to include why you're the wrong one and he's the right one. And so I would shudder to think what his actual personal relationships are like, because it's clear that nobody likes this dude. And that's pretty rare. It's pretty rare to find a person that really nobody likes. It's funny, he says, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to go home. We don't hold these police officers responsible for what they do to put themselves in danger in the first place. And actually there's a case that I'm going to be covering in the future that I just listened to oral arguments for that was just heard by the Supreme Court. And it's a Texas case. And it's a really interesting, I think it's Barnes v. Felix. But it's basically the way that the Fifth Circuit handles police use of force is to ignore everything that happened up until the moment where the officer uses force and only look at would a reasonable police officer feel a certain way in this 2-second moment, and ignores the totality of the circumstances approach that would give us some context as to why we were here. And so their decision in that case will probably have an enormous effect on how we judge these police officers. Because if you got yourself in a bunch of trouble and risked your own life by overreacting to everything that you saw on the scene, why should we allow you to be covered by qualified immunity? Why should we allow you to take somebody's life just so you can go home when you're the person who put your life in peril in the first place? If you were suing somebody because you got hurt, if you had anything to do with your own peril, most likely your claim would be barred or at least diminished by whatever your percentage of liability. Not when it comes to law enforcement. It's just a problem. In closing, this is what you get with police unions. The union protects people no matter what they do. And so, these guys have tried everything. They've tried to post commission. They've tried everything. Can't seem to get anything done with this guy. So I'm going to follow this. I'll update you as we go along. It'll be interesting to see whether the Michigan State Police or the Melvindale Police do anything with this guy. But I really, is this the worst police officer in America that hasn't actually killed somebody yet and is on his way? Because I think that's inevitable. If this guy continues along the path, that's inevitable. The taxpayers of this city are going to be paying out the wazoo for whoever he kills, because as long as he's allowed to work the system, have no accountability, continue to do A, B, C, or D, and never, ever, ever face consequences for it, ultimately his I'll do whatever it takes to go home will end somebody's life. And maybe then something will happen to him. But let me know what you guys think about this guy. I'm sure I have an idea. That's all for this one, guys. Thanks for sticking it out. If you'd like to support Southern Draw Law channel monetarily, I don't offer any type of memberships, but I'll put my Venmo and PayPal link both here on the screen as well as in the description. Please remember to like and subscribe and leave a comment on the video. Check out some of the other videos on the channel and leave a comment on there as well. Until I see you again, take care. Always film your interactions with the police and keep your evidence to yourself.